Difference between whose and whose with examples. Whose tells us about ownership. Example. Whose bag is this? This is Jessica's bag. Whose book is that over there? Whose book is that over there? Whose car was parked in front of my house? Whose car was parked in front of my house? We wondered whose wallet was left on the bench. We wondered whose wallet was left on the bench. Whose phone is ringing? Whose phone is ringing? Whose keys are on the table? Whose keys are on the table? Whose dog is barking outside? Whose dog is barking outside? Whose handwriting is on this note? Whose handwriting is on this note? Whose jacket is this on the chair? Whose jacket is this on the chair? Whose child is crying in the next room? Whose child is crying in the next room? Let's not argue about whose fault it is. Let's not argue about whose fault it is. Whose responsibility is it to feed the pets? Whose responsibility is it to feed the pets? The ruthless thief did not care whose belongings he stole. The ruthless thief did not care whose belongings he stole. Whose, it is a short form of who is or who has. Example. Who's going to the party? My brother. Here, whose expands to who is. Another example. Who's taken my key? Here, whose expands to who has. Who's coming to dinner tonight? Who's coming to dinner tonight? Peter is an accountant who's considering an early retirement. Peter is an accountant who's considering an early retirement. Who's at the door? Who's at the door? Who's eaten all the cookies? Who's eaten all the cookies? Who's in charge of the meeting? Who's in charge of the meeting? My aunt is someone who's living in Canada. My aunt is someone who's living in Canada. Who's been to the circus? Who's been to the circus? Who's going to the store with mom? Who's going to the store with mom? Who's driving that red car? Who's driving that red car? I have no idea who's working tomorrow. I have no idea who's working tomorrow. Who's your new teacher? Who's your new teacher? Who's playing the piano? Who's playing the piano? To watch more videos, subscribe our Pep English channel.